Good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Home-Based Business Success Podcast. Today's topic, using forces intangible. We'll be right back after this. Hey, good morning, everybody, and happy Wednesday. This is Ralph Lindy of ralphlindy.com and the Home-Based Business Success Podcast. Today, I've got a little different topic to approach, one that may seem strange to some people that do not come from a spiritual or religious background. But today, we're going to talk about an idea that I was reminded of while reading the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. And in chapter 14 of his book, focusing on the sixth sense, Napoleon Hill describes a practice that he got into to help him refocus his subconscious mind, and as he put it, a practice that helped him to rebuild his character to help him become a more successful person. And this was a practice which allowed him to tap into forces invisible and intangible, forces that a lot of folks really doubt the existence of, or, if we do accept the existence of these forces, we tend to play it down, we say, okay, that happened, but that happened. It's inside your head. You're using your imagination. It's all inside your head. And folks like Napoleon Hill would agree. Yes. By using your imagination, you are tapping into certain powers, certain forces that everybody has access to, but a lot of people just don't really see the value in, because they think, it's just your imagination. You're focusing too much on imaginary concepts, imaginary things, and not enough on real life. But the brilliance, really, of Napoleon Hill's work is that he realized that a lot of the things that we have access to in the physical world, it all begins in the mind. It all begins in the head. And he says that there is something called creative imagination. And folks who are able to tap into their creative imagination, they tap into a power through which the universe was created, through which the universe is sustained, and through which many things, many desirable things can be manifested within your life. And the problem with this is that a lot of people use their imagination, their minds, their creative imagination to create things around them, but they do not do it consciously. They do it unconsciously and unaware. And sometimes you can create good things through your creative imagination. Other times you can create very nasty and negative things through your power of imagination and your creative imagination. So, we're going to be talking about this simple practice, really. You can get real deep and real metaphysical about it, but the application of this is extremely simple. And we'll be getting into that right after this little musical break. Going to play a song by a group that I kind of like. I've stumbled across them a few years ago. The Celtic Reggae Revolution. And this is a song called Positive. And we'll be right back with the rest of today's presentation right after this.
Positive people. Positive with life. Happier.
You know this life is always changing. Nothing stays the same. Life has got its beauty, but life has got its pain. Take the rough with the smooth and get into the groove. Nothing ever was sure, so you ain't got nothing to lose. No, positive, that's the way I wanna live.
Positive change. Happier.
Positive, that's the way I wanna live.
Happier.
There ain't no problem, there's only solutions. There ain't no problem, no. There ain't no problem, there's only solutions. There ain't no problem, no. Positive, that's the way I wanna live.
Positive change. Happier.
Positive, that's the way I wanna live.
Happier. Positive love.
There ain't no problems, there's only solutions. There ain't no problems, no. There ain't no problems, there's only solutions. There ain't no problems, no.
When it comes to changing our lives, we can see a lot of different forces and powers around us that we feel might be able to help us make positive change in our lives. And most people, we tend to think in terms of the physical powers, the physical forces, people that we can go to and ask help from. And, sometimes we can find somebody that is in a position to help. We can talk to that person, we can ask for their aid, and they can give it to us and they can help us make positive change in our life. But there is one problem with focusing on only the material, only the visible powers and the visible forces, and the visible entities in our lives, and that is that not everybody really has access to a millionaire when you need one. It's kind of hard to get an audience, for example, with Elon Musk. He's a busy guy. And so if you've got a question about entrepreneurship or a question about rocket science or something like that, you might be able to get an audience with Elon Musk, or call him up, Skype him, get a hold of him somehow. Probably, though, you won't be able to, but using the power of the imagination, using the power of especially creative imagination, as Napoleon Hill speaks of in his book Think and Grow Rich, everybody has access to certain powers, certain forces. We can call them certain archetypes. Archetypes that have the power to help us shape ourselves and rebuild ourselves. And powers and forces and concepts that are available to all. And that's one thing that we really see a power of the archetypes, is that what an archetype is, if you haven't done any reading in Carl Jung or done any reading in certain spiritual practices, an archetype is thought of as being an original form. And these are original thought forms that are available to all peoples in all cultures. And there are many different archetypes. Carl Jung focused on 12 common archetypes. And there are many more different archetypes. Some basic archetypes is the archetype of the warrior, the archetype of the lover, the archetype of the wise person, the sage, the mystic, the archetype of the strong person, strength, the archetype of change. I mean, there's just all different. The archetype of the healer, archetype of the doctor, the original thought form of what we know in our material existence as being flesh and blood doctors. Well, there's an archetypal form that goes beyond that, an original thought form that pre-exists the physical form. And the thing about the archetypes, okay, they are mystical, they're kind of intangible, they are hard to describe, and most people are totally oblivious to their existence. But the good news is that everybody has access to these forces, to these powers, to these archetypes. And these archetypes are accessible through using your creative imagination, through meditation, and through the power of dreams. A lot of people touch the archetypes when they go to sleep and they get into the dream state. That's where a lot of people will experience, different people coming to them in their dreams, talking to them. And, wise people, they will listen to their dreams. They'll focus on those dreams and they'll wonder, what was this entity, this character in my dream? What was this character trying to teach me? And fools will just say, that was something I ate. I'm not going to worry about that. Not going to pay that any mind. It was a neat dream. Now let's get on with day-to-day reality. And the wisdom, the genius really of Napoleon Hill, is that he realized that everything that starts in the material world actually begins in the imagination. It begins in the mind. And if you're a spiritual person, you can think of it this way. Everything in the material world begins in the spiritual world. Before things manifest in material existence, it begins as a thought, or a thought form, or a power, or an entity within the spiritual realm. And what Napoleon Hill did in order to access, this these intangible forces, let's just call them that, he sat down and he decided he was going to form a council, what he called an invisible council, that would be populated by invisible, imaginary counselors. And he thought of great people throughout history that he respected and whose qualities he wanted to emulate in his life. And what he did is that he thought of, okay, I want Thomas Edison, because, Thomas Edison, your power of creativity, your brilliance in being an inventor, I need that. I need that quality within my life. And I want you to serve on my invisible council and be one of my invisible counselors and touch my subconscious so that I might emulate these qualities that were very strong in your life. I want you to speak this to my subconscious so that I might begin to emulate these qualities within my own life. And he had, let's see, I'm going to open up the book here and just go through a list of some of the folks that he had serving on his invisible council. But he had, let's see, Napoleon Bonaparte, not Napoleon Hill, Darwin, Lincoln, Andrew Carnegie, Mr. Burbank, a lot of different folks that had qualities that he wanted to emulate within his life. And he would talk to these entities as if they were material, flesh and blood people. And the practice that he adopted is that every night he would sit down and he would have a board meeting with these invisible counselors, and he would serve as the chairman of the board. So Napoleon Hill would be in charge of the meeting, and he'd call the meeting to order. He'd wait for everybody to show up. And again, in his imagination, he would imagine these people coming to the board meeting, and he would speak to them, making it clear, why he wanted these people to serve on his board and what he hoped to attain, what he wanted these entities to help him to grow within his life. If it was something like courage, okay, that I need from you courage. From you, I need imagination. From you, I need, your wit and, your persistence. And he would just speak to them and say, okay, this is why I want you here. This is where I need your help. Speak to me in my subconscious. Touch my subconscious mind and help me to emulate these qualities that I see in your life, and let me manifest these qualities in my own life. And he did this practice, he says, on a nightly basis for several months. And it was after it was after a few months that he says he began to doubt his own sanity. Maybe that's putting it too strongly. But he said that these imaginary characters that were based on real-life people in history, they began to take on such a life of their own and just show personality traits that he really did not expect, that it startled him. And at one point, he says he put a stop to the practice until he could kind of digest everything that had been going on. And then he just decided, okay, this is for the good. I'm going to pick this practice back up. But it's interesting because what Napoleon Hill talks about in speaking to these imaginary characters, it reminds me of some of the episodes that I remember reading about in the life of Carl Jung. Carl Jung was a psychologist who was roughly contemporary with Napoleon Hill, and he did a lot of research into the archetypes, and he would get into a very deep meditation and allow these archetypes to speak to him in his subconscious. And he says that at one point in his experience, too, these archetypal forms, they came through so powerfully, and they would speak to him, I mean, in very strange ways. You know, thoughts would begin to manifest in his mind that were, thoughts that he would never think, but, they were coming from somewhere else in the universe. Forces and powers intangible. And these forces, these powers would begin having conversations with him in his subconscious mind. And at one point, he began to wonder, am I crazy here? But again, the payoff in this practice, however you approach it, is that you do open your subconscious mind to suggestions, to creative thoughts that really would never have occurred to you before. And you begin to see things in a whole new light. And you begin to have the power to grow certain qualities within you. Now, what Napoleon Hill did, he didn't really focus on archetypes per se. He was actually focusing on archetypes because, if you're focusing on a person that was rich and powerful, and you want to bring that power into your life, that ability to create wealth, create riches, well, there is an archetype for wealth. An archetype of the rich man, the rich woman, the emperor, the empress. Those of you who read tarot cards will know what I'm talking about here. But what Napoleon Hill did, he wasn't really focusing on them as archetypes. He was focusing on them as historical people, flesh and blood human beings that, were flesh and blood human beings at one point in time, but folks that he could access, through his knowledge of history and through his creative imagination and ask for help and guidance from. And so what Napoleon Hill did is pretty similar to what Carl Jung did in working with the archetypes. He was opening himself to positive forces that were from a realm intangible. Not flesh and blood people, but intangible forces that he felt had the power to shape and form his life in a very positive way. And Napoleon Hill did this by forming his own council of historical persons. They were gone. People who had died, they were in the afterlife when he began to reach out to them through his creative imagination. But they had the power to reach out to him, and he had the power to reach out to them and focus on the qualities that he wanted to emulate. And so, he did that through focusing on historical persons. Now, if you are a spiritual person, a religious person, you can focus on figures from your spiritual or religious tradition. Christians that want to develop a better sense of love, better sense of compassion and caring. You've got, Jesus the Good Shepherd. If you want to focus on the power of just brute force, military might, the power to get out there and do what needs to be done to set things right in the world, well, you got Christ the powerful warrior, Christ the general from the book of Revelations that rides in on a white horse and just sets things right. There's the archetype of Christ the King. Many different views of Jesus that are common within Christianity, each slightly different, but each connected, and each representing a different archetype. So yeah, if you want to deal with the archetypes on a Christian level, that is a possibility. That door is open to you. Or if you're a Muslim and you want to focus on Islamic, characters, Islamic characters that represent certain archetypes, certain thought forms, certain powers and qualities that you want to manifest into your life, then that would be a good exercise for you. Concentrate on these characters from that religious tradition. Same with Buddhists, the same with Hindus. Hinduism, that's something that my wife and I have been embracing now for a few years in our readings of sacred texts like the Bhagavad Gita. And there is a wealth of wisdom contained in that book and contained in that overall tradition. And there are numerous thought forms, God forms, archetypes that you can make use of and avail yourself to. But, start with something that you are comfortable with. Start with something that you feel will help you make a positive change in your life, because we got to focus on the positive qualities. There are positive archetypes, there are negative archetypes. Throughout history, there have been people that represent positive uses of power, and there have been folks that represent the negative, destructive use of power. So if you want to use this practice in whatever form to help you make positive change in your life, focus on the positive forces, positive unseen forces that do exist in the universe, if only in your imagination. And this is something that I have fun with. A lot of folks will be listening to concepts like this, and they'll be saying, man, you're just talking to imaginary people. You're just focusing on imaginary concepts. This is all inside your head. And one of my favorite authors on the occult, Lon Milo Duquette, was once asked, he was giving a talk on ceremonial magic, and a person who was interviewing him asked, is this real? Or is it all inside my head? And Lon Milo chuckled and he said, yeah, it's all happening inside your head. And you will be amazed at how big your head really is and how powerful your head really is. And the problem that a lot of folks have, a lot of folks that, whether they know it or not, tend to be materialists, is that they focus on the tangible. And they think, okay, if I can't see it, if I can't touch it, if I can't feel it, if I can't hear it, it doesn't exist. But there's a lot in the universe that we cannot see, that we cannot feel. We can feel it within our psyche, we can feel it within our hearts, but we can't feel it physically. It's a lot of forces in the universe we cannot hear, we cannot touch it, we cannot taste it, but we can experience its power moving in our lives. There are intangibles such as love. What makes a person fall in love with another person? And I'm not talking about falling into lust. We all know what triggers that. It's the familiar biological urges. But, what triggers love, compassion? What makes a person want to lay down their life for another person? What makes a person fall in love so deeply that they would give their very lives for that beloved? What is it? It is a power. It is a force. And it is intangible. And what Napoleon Hill really addresses in his book, Think and Grow Rich, is that these intangible powers, these intangible forces, they have the power to affect us positively in the material world. But first, it all starts in the mind. It all starts in your imagination. It all starts in your thoughts. What we think about most, that is what we produce, what we generate, what we manifest in our life. And if we have predominantly positive thoughts, we will begin to attract and manifest these positive occurrences into our life. But if we're fixated and focused on predominantly negative thoughts and negative emotions, then we will attract and manifest those negative qualities into our life. And that's the basis of Think and Grow Rich. Is that if you're focused on wealth, if you're focused on positive wealth creation, if that is your desire, if that is your dream, if you put a lot of energy into thinking about wealth and seeing yourself in your imagination growing wealthy and becoming a successful person, then eventually that is what will manifest in your life. The opposite of that is if you're a person that is constantly worried about money, fearful about money, if you're a fear-based person who is worried about poverty, and you begin to put a lot of your personal thought energy into poverty and being worried about, oh my God, we've only got, so much money in the bank. What if that gets wiped out? What if Putin nukes the West? Well, what are we going to do? If you focus on poverty thinking, feelings of mortality, feelings of destruction, death, looming, just knocking at your front door, as it were, then those are the qualities you will begin to bring into your life. Instead of a happy, prosperous person, you will manifest being a broken, impoverished person, a person who is worried about a great many things and scared of his or her own shadow. And that's not a good place to be. And the good news is that by changing your thoughts, you can change your life, but you can also change your life by changing your thoughts and focusing on the energy that you want to bring into your life. If you want to bring in the power of love, focus on the power of love. If you want the power of love to overcome the power of fear in your life, focus on an archetypal figure of love, an archetypal figure of power, an archetypal figure of strength. And what you focus on the most will grow in your life. And if you're focusing on, bringing in the positive, then that is what will begin to manifest in your life. If you focus on the negative, and we all are subjected to that. You can turn on the news on a daily basis and just be subjected to all sorts of negative thoughts, fear-based things that they're just cramming down our throats. Why, I don't listen to the news much anymore. I turn it on briefly to kind of see, okay, what's going on in the world today, and then I turn it off, do my meditation, do my prayer, focus on what I want to manifest within my life, and empower that. But so many people go through life unaware, sleeping, really, unconscious, unconscious sufferers, as George Harrison once put it. And they just allow these negative thoughts to bombard them, to creep into their mind, to creep into their subconscious. And there they grow and they fester and they manifest like a cancer that is out of control. What Napoleon Hill is talking about, and other folks like him who have practiced something similar, what he's telling us is that you have the power to fill your subconscious mind with positive qualities, and have those positive qualities begin to weed out the negative and allow the positive to gain strength within your subconscious, and then begin to transform and reform your mind and your life. And when the mind is transformed, the material life can be transformed. But it all begins in the mind. It all begins in your thoughts. It all begins in your imagination. And as one guy, said, asked Lon Milo Duquette, is this stuff real? Or is it all just happening inside my head? And he said, yeah, it's all happening inside your head. But you would be amazed at how big your head really is, and how powerful your head really is. And Napoleon Hill, I think, would put it another way. And by the way, I'm beginning this practice of building my own invisible council, and the first person that I chose is Napoleon Hill. I want to get that archetypal force of Napoleon Hill, bring him into my creative imagination, and just ask him, sir, am I getting this right? So he's the first person that I asked to be on my invisible council, and we had our first meeting the other night, and it all went well. But this is something that takes months of practice. This isn't a quick, magic bullet. This is something that you have to focus on, and slowly your mind will begin to transform. And this is where a lot of people have a problem, is that we want change in our life, okay? We say we want change, but we want instant gratification. We want it now. A friend of mine used to say, God, give me patience and give it to me now. And that's what we want. We want instant success, instant gratification. But the philosophy that is espoused in the book Think and Grow Rich, it's something that we have to grow with. It's something that, we think, we begin to build positive thoughts, we recognize the power of our thoughts, and then we allow our thoughts to transform our mind, speak to our actions, begin to rebuild our inner character, and begin to rebuild our lives and our outer world. But it all begins with the thoughts. And I think that's what Napoleon Hill would say. Yes, you would not believe how powerful your thoughts really are. And the sad thing is, most people do not really know how to control their thoughts. They see something on TV, they read something on social media, and then all of a sudden, man, they are triggered. There's an emotional outburst, and you don't know where the heck it came from, and the person themselves, they don't know where the heck it came from. It's just, you triggered me, it's your fault. And the problem is that when we are in that mindset, we are out of control of our own thoughts, feelings, and emotions. And through practices such as building an invisible council based on historical persons, archetypal characters, spiritual, religious characters. We can focus on the things, the thoughts that we want to grow in our life and give power to those thoughts. And we can weed out the negative. But it takes time. This doesn't happen overnight. You can't sit down one night, have your invisible council meeting, talk to these characters in your imagination and these archetypes, and think that, okay, I've changed my life now. Tomorrow I am going to be a millionaire. This is a slower process than that. This is something where you have to give it a few months and give it enough time to begin to change your thinking. Because a lot of us, especially older people, those of us in our 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, oh God, you may think that you can't teach an old dog new tricks. You've got all this pre-programmed stuff that's been shoved into your mind and is stored, carried around in your subconscious. And you may think, okay, it's there, it's planted, I see it, but there's nothing I can do about it. And the thing is, there is something we can do about it. It just takes time, which is the benefit to starting this practice when you're younger. Because, man, if you start this practice when you're 20, I think Napoleon Hill, I think he was doing this early in life. And he gave this time to really begin to transform himself and to change his way of thinking. But, man, if you start practices like this, focusing on controlling your thoughts, growing positive thoughts, growing positive qualities within your life, you do that at a younger age, you do have an advantage. But my message to older folks out there, if you're like 60 like I am, or 50 or 70, it's not too late. It's only too late if you don't start immediately. But it does take time. But, old dogs, we can be taught new tricks. The only question is, are you open to it? How badly do you want it? Do you want to sit down and read Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill and let that text seep into your mind? Or would you rather sit down and watch Netflix and chill? And, boy, I wasted a lot of years just sitting down on the couch after work, drinking beer, watching TV, and just doing nothing and going nowhere. And man, 40 years ago, if I'd been reading Think and Grow Rich and other similar books and trying to transform my life, I'd be in a whole lot, a much better condition right now. But, I am doing okay as it is, and I'm focusing on becoming better. I'm focusing on growing my inner character, plus my outer life, my income, and I know it's possible. I know it's doable, and I know the disciplines that it takes, and I have the determination that I am going to let this take as long as it takes. I'm going to put in the daily action needed to cleanse my mind, to grow a more positive version of Ralph Lindy, and it's just going to take as long as it takes. But with daily action comes daily rewards, and it's going to be like growing a blade of grass. You don't plant a grass seed one day and then the next day you're out there harvesting hay. No. Grass does not grow that quickly. Grass grows one day's worth of growth in one day's time. And if you're willing to give it the time to work, these disciplines can work. And Napoleon Hill, it's like this imaginary council, this invisible council idea of his. It's one that I've heard of before. It's not quite in that same manner, and not to that same extent. But it's a practice I've heard of before, and I've actually done myself before and found some benefit in. And what I'm doing now is I'm taking the approach that Napoleon Hill describes, assembling a council, having nightly board meetings, and talking to these powers, these entities, these archetypal figures, if you will, and allowing them, giving them the permission to speak to me within my unconscious mind, subconscious mind, and begin to affect positive change. Allow me to grow. And this is, a practice where you have control over the board meeting. You are the chairman of the board. And these other entities, they're there at your request. And, you have the power to dismiss them if they start getting unruly, if they start... and what Napoleon Hill did, he had the power to shut the whole thing down for a few months because these characters were just developing their own personalities so well that it was scary to him. And he thought, okay, I'm going to shut this down and stop it and see where it goes and just evaluate what's been going on. Because the forces of our mind, they are powerful, but they are also meant to be under our control. And that may be a foreign concept to a lot of people listening now, people that are used to going through life in a very unconscious way, people who feel out of control when it comes to their thoughts, folks who feel out of control when it comes to their feelings and their emotions. But with practice, daily practice, nightly practice, our thoughts, feelings, and emotions can be brought under our control. As St. Paul once said, I think this is in the book of one of the book of Corinthians. I don't know if it's first or second, but he says the spirits are subject to your control. And I think that's kind of similar to what Napoleon Hill here is saying in his Invisible Council. He invited these council members in, but at the same time, he was in charge. He was in control. He was the chairman of the board. And so they worked together, using that model, that business model, that model of just having a board meeting every night and talking things over and seeing what needed to be done next. And when you avail yourself to forces that are intangible, as well as forces and powers that are tangible, real life people, folks that you can go to, flesh and blood beings in the day-to-day world, folks that you can ask for assistance, for help. But avail yourself of all of these powers would be my suggestion. The physical and the inphysical, the tangible and the intangible. And avail yourself of every opportunity that you can get to make change in your life. And remember, it all begins in the thoughts that we think and what goes on inside of our head. Where are you at right now? Are the forces inside of your head, are your own thoughts, are they predominantly positive? Are they aiding your success? Are they telling you you've got a shot at this? You've got a real shot at becoming a successful person? Or are the forces, the thoughts within your head, are they predominantly negative? Are they telling you throw in the towel? It's over. It's hopeless. You just don't have a shot. You're a complete and utter failure. You're a loser. Don't even try. Why disappoint yourself any further? If those are the predominant thoughts in your head, then you might need to begin changing your thoughts and focusing on the positive. And that's where I say, and I've been saying for years, mindset is everything. If you believe you can, you ultimately will. If you believe you can't, no power on earth can help you. And so, yes, focus on these powers, these forces, tangible, intangible, power of thought, the power of forces that we see in the physical world. Focus on and use them all to your benefit. But don't discount the power of the imagination, the power of your mind. Because, I'll just close with this thought. A lot of this stuff is happening inside your head, and you would not believe how powerful your head can be. And you would not believe how powerful your thoughts really are. Are you going to harness them and bring them under your control? Or are you just going to let them run wild like a pack of wild wolves or a herd of wild buffalo, just stampeding and doing their damage, and you just feel like you have no control over it? We can gain control. We can use our thoughts for the better and literally think and grow rich. Think and grow better. Okay, we're going to say enough of this. My, I've gone on almost an hour. But we're going to close with a little ditty here by Mark Cook, Doing What I Do Best. I think that's a good place to leave it. We'll talk to you again tomorrow. Not exactly sure what my focus is going to be on, but we'll just take it as it goes. Thanks for dropping by. Best of luck in growing your thoughts and growing your business. And we'll see you tomorrow. Take care.
To play my song, don't need no advice on what you feel is wrong. Doing what I do best, trying to find the sound. Don't expect you to understand, just try not to bring me down. Just another quiet night as I head from town to town. Highway keeps calling me, there's no time to settle down. The music's in my soul, feelings I can't let go. Don't try to stop me now, I just gotta let it flow. You've been saying what's right for me ever since the day we met. Why can't you see the light that no one's changed me yet? You got a lot to learn, if you think you can change me now, you best get off the case before I show you how. What I do best, here to play my song. Don't need no advice on what you feel is wrong. Just do what I do best, why can't you understand? No woman gonna change me now and make me a better man. You've been saying what's right for me ever since the day we met. Why can't you see the light that no one's changed me yet? You got a lot to learn. If you think you can change me now, you best get off the case before I show you how. Woo! Oh yeah. tired night as I head from town to town. Highway keeps calling me, there's no time to settle down. Doing what I do best, here to play my song.